so I guess we will go ahead and get started. Rich is suggesting that it's go week because we had 2 GEO meetings this week, so thanks for that levity. So I'll call this meeting to order, January 7th, 2021, our first meeting of 2021. And I just wanted to say to start off, I have been pretty glued to the TV yesterday and last night, and so hopefully I'm not too distracted, but kind of some crazy stuff going on in the world, and it sort of reminded me about how impressive and important our staff is, and the staff at the Capitol kept going and did the work of government that needed to be done, and I appreciate them, and I really appreciate all the staff who come to these government operations committee meetings, because you are the folks who do the work of government, and we elected officials are just here to spend the money, as Mike Sigler was just saying. So thank you to our staff for continuing even on the dark days. So are there any changes to the agenda? Rich?
I was going to just add a comment if I could. Not that I want to derail our important agenda, but one of the things that struck me in being glued to the television yesterday was just how broken things are in Washington. At the national level, we've got some really, really significant problems. And it brought home to me how important it is that on the local level, we make it work. And yes, our staff does great stuff here, and we should be very proud that on the local level, we can seem to make things work. And we have to, I think, help our federal colleagues relearn the skill. Anyway. Yeah.
Definitely. No, I think it's a good point to reiterate, is that, you know, we have differences of opinion here, but what we are doing in Tompkins County government is, as Dan has said to me, we put out good work. We're doing good work, and that is in large part because of the staff. So, all right. Now, are there any changes to the agenda? Any additions or anything? Okay. Any comments from the public? Kathy?
No, Amanda, we don't.
Okay. Why don't we take the minutes from our last meeting, December 3rd? Can somebody move those? Mike moves, Rich seconds. Any comments or changes or questions? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Henry, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm yes, so that passes. Thank you. Excuse me. All right, we've got a couple of resolutions from assessment. I think Jay is here. So why don't we go ahead with the first one, appropriation from contingent fund terminal pay ID 9783. Can somebody move that, please? Rich moves, Mike seconds. Discussion about this, or Jay, is there anything you want to tell us?
No, this is just your typical contingent fund request for our 3 employees who retired at the end of the year.
Great. I don't see any questions. So let's go ahead and vote. Henry?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm yes. So thank you, that passes. And then we have resolution refund of taxes, Village of Lansing, ID 9839. Can somebody move that, please? Mike moves, Rich seconds. Discussion, or Jay, do you have anything about this one?
Yeah, this was we had thought that a battery storage unit that was on the property on Bomax Drive was installed as of March 1st. Due to COVID, I guess we didn't confirm that it actually was, and we were going off permits. We weren't notified until after school bill had went out and was charged. So since the improvement wasn't there, it should be expunged. We were able to get this taken into account for the town and county bill. So there won't be any refunds for that or for the village.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Mike? Mike, go ahead.
When you say battery storage, sorry, when you say battery storage, what do you mean battery storage?
Yeah, these are one of the installations that are going around that NICEAG has been putting in. So during the night, the business is able to take electricity out of the grid and then be able to use that when the demand pricing may be a little bit higher. So they're able to save some money on their utility costs. One was put in on Brentwood. The Lansing Market has one installed. The one now here on Bomax, and there's another one that I can't think of where it's located. The Dairy One building on Warren Road has the other battery storage facility.
I guess I'm just surprised that we actually boost their assessment. I mean, that sounds like a lot of money, $10,000. I'm surprised that we would boost their assessment that much for something that I guess would be considered a green. Is it considered a green feature? Or?
It is. It's not eligible for one of the exemptions that we have out there. There's not an exemption for this. But it's not a conservation project. It's just changing where you get that electricity from. These things are not financially feasible. If they weren't heavily subsidized by NICEAG, they wouldn't be installed. I don't think any business who would be looking at their bottom line would want to install one of these storage systems in upstate New York. If you were downstate where demand pricing was a little bit higher, it may be more financially feasible. Up here, no one would do it. But since they've done it, there is value for that electric savings that they would have.
Sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
why is the state subsidizing them then, I guess?
In order to make it financially feasible, the
Right,
same
yeah, I
way
understand.
they do with solar arrays or wind. Nobody would do it without the financial incentives.
Right, so they are doing it as part of a green energy portfolio, I guess.
Correct. And I think part of this is in response to the gas moratorium that's in Lansing.
Right.
A residual of that.
So should we be looking at not assessing that more? I mean, should we make that eligible for exemption? I mean, could that be something we'd consider?
It would take state legislation to do so. I'd be more than willing to write up draft legislation in order to run it by our newly elected assemblywoman.
I mean, I'm open to that if the chairwoman is. I mean, and the other members. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in learning more and seeing what you come up with, Jay.
Okay, I'll put something together for the February GO meeting.
Okay.
And we'll be able to do one of the urging New York State to pass
One of our favorite. I've got several hands. I saw Anne's hand first, so I'm gonna go with you. You might have something to say about this.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, so a little bit more that I know about this is it's not just to help them financially, but as folks said, as far as it's part of lessening the need and demand for gas, but it also lessens the demand for electricity at peak times when businesses are operating. So if they can take their electricity at night, then we have less peak demand, which, shaves off, a little bit of energy here and there. And then it could overall, the state is looking at do we need less other ways to manufacture electricity? Because, while people are sleeping at residences, for instance, you don't typically need as much electricity. So it's to help balance the grid. So in essence, it should help us towards the whole New York State green energy initiatives. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that clarification. Henry?
Yes, Jay, how did you discover that it hadn't been put in time?
Yeah, after the property owner got their school tax bill,
Right.
and then they contacted us, and then we confirmed with Mike Scott from the village that it wasn't installed as of March 1, 2020.
I mean, I know Ann talked about the shifting of the electricity. Does it save them money?
Yes, it would save them money because of their pricing on when they purchase that electricity from the grid. Rather than purchasing it during the day, they purchase it at night.
You have a sense of how much they save?
I'd have to go and look through our files on this.
But I assume it's more than $10,000.
I don't know. I'd have to look at that. Yeah.
All right, Rich?
Thanks, Amanda. I would just say, I think this is worth asking New York State about. And since we have the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, this seems like a perfect type of issue to throw to them. And I just also add that them having battery backup actually helps everybody, because you're going to reduce peak demand where the highest expense is. Anyway, I think this is good.
Great. And that's a good point. I mean, we could certainly talk about it more here, but maybe that other committee would be interested as well. Okay, anything else on this?
Say I'll work with Kathy, and I'm glad we made this error so that we could move forward in a greater way. So
there you go. See, learning from our errors is always good. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Dan?
Yes.
Mike? I think.
Yes.
Yes. Henry? Oh, Henry seems frozen. Rich?
Yes.
Henry, are you there? All right, well, I'm a yes, so.
Yes.
Oh, there he is. Great.
Oh.
All right, so that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jay.
thank you. Take care.
Wait,
Yep,
before you
take
go, Jay.
Yep.
Oh.
Can I have a question?
Yep, go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. So right moments before I was leaving to come to this meeting, I got a phone call from a resident with a question. So I fired off that question to the finance department. And then just checking my email when I got here, I see that Jay addressed the same question. So while you're here, I'm just going to ask it. Apparently, a couple of the towns are late in sending out the tax bills. And they're still not sent out in some of the towns. Does this in any way affect when the taxes are due?
No, according to the real property tax law, the act of sending out a tax bill or not sending out a tax bill doesn't have any effect on the validity of that tax bill. You can't rely on the mail to deliver that bill. So the failure to mail or the failure to receive does not jeopardize that tax is still due. It's one of the things that's certain in life is you're always going to have a school bill and you're always going to have a town and county bill here in New York State. So people need to realize that if the mail doesn't show. But unfortunately, with a couple new clerks, and I believe it's just the town of Danby and the town of Enfield that hasn't sent out their tax bills yet. The town of Enfield is collecting taxes. I haven't confirmed that the town of Danby is collecting, but taxes are still due by February 1st. Typically, that's January 31st, but that falls on a Sunday, so it moves to Monday. So I know Danby is supposed to be mailing out their bills tomorrow, from
Right.
what I heard from, I believe, the property owner that you may have talked to, Dan.
I believe it's the same person, yes.
Yeah, so, but all of the tax rolls are posted on our webpage so people can see what their amount due is. If anyone calls our office, I'm more than willing to print off a bill and email it to them, just so that they have that copy. This is a town charge and a town responsibility for printing and mailing those tax bills. We process and print them and charge the town. So once we give the tax bills to them, it's really up to their elected clerks to get it into the mail.
Okay, thank you. That's not the answer she wanted to hear, but it's pretty clear. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank
And
you.
And
Anything else?
it would take state legislation to move that deadline further into February. And I don't think just the clerk forgetting or not sending out the bill yet would raise to that level. But, you know, if that's what the towns want to pursue, that's something that they could do so.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Anything else for Jay? Anyone wants to ask? All right, thanks again, Jay.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, so we have Elizabeth Cree and Steve DeWitt here from the Board of Elections. And as you all know, we voted to set the special election for District 2 for the county legislature on Tuesday. And so Steve and Elizabeth are here to answer questions about that or talk to us about our county legislature elections this year. So welcome to you both. And I guess I'll just let you, if you want to start off by giving us any information, and then I'll let folks ask questions.
Well, one thing that I'd like to say is yesterday I was on a meeting with the Republican caucus for the state, and we were mentioning the petition numbers and trying to get the petitions ready for the special election and also our local elections. And there's been rumor that they will shorten the number of signature requirements by 30%, except that they said with caution, there's nothing in writing and nobody's talked to them. It's just a rumor. So I did want to bring that up because I had mentioned it the other day. I'm really hoping that they pass that because I just can't imagine being able to get enough signatures this year.
Yeah, definitely. Have you heard about anything on the Democratic side, Steve? Just rumors?
Well, essentially the same rumors that Elizabeth just said. I think anything that they're likely to do is not going to affect the petitioning for the special election because that'll be all done with in 2 weeks. But it certainly would be a big help for the petitioning that goes on in February.
Definitely. Has the state put out I've looked a couple times. Is there an official calendar for the year yet? No.
Not yet.
No calendar.
I mean, if you go by past couple of years, the statute does say the fourth Tuesday in June is the primary day, unless the legislature changes it. So going forward, I think primary would probably be June 22nd, I believe that's
Second.
Tuesday. And then first day for petitioning would then be February 23rd.
February 23rd. And do you have any sort of, there's rumors, but is there a sort of timeline of when they might make some decisions, or is it going to end up being last minute thing from the governor, or how do you see it going in the next 2 months before petitioning starts?
I don't know. What have you heard, Elizabeth?
Just really nothing, honestly. I know that there was legislation that the parties are talking about putting forward as far as making it, instead of having to do petitioning so much to actually just do it like we're doing with the special election and do certificate of nominations. So that's been floated around.
Right.
And I believe our local petitions are supposed to be due April 1st, but nothing's official yet.
Okay. All right. Well, what other questions does anyone have? Henry?
Yes. Steve, were there supposedly people meeting this week to talk about it?
Talk about the signature
Petitioning.
requirements in the calendar and
Right.
all that. Well, it's either comes one or two ways. It comes from legislation through the state legislature, which I think is just started, or an executive order by the governor. That was how it happened last year. And, governor last year usually waited, maybe not to the last minute, but certainly, pretty close to the last minute.
And was it cut by 50% last year? Or 30%?
Yeah, I think it was more like 35%.
Yeah, because petitioning had already started.
Right.
It was, halfway through the period or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also got an email saying that the 5th ward and the 3rd ward were invited to attend this Saturday for consideration of the special election people. There are 2 people running for Anna's old seat.
Oh, they do have 2 people?
Yep.
For sure?
Yep, for sure.
Wow,
So,
okay.
well, there are 2 people interested in getting the nomination. I'm not sure whether they don't get the nomination, whether the other person will run,
Right.
or whether they even grant a nomination.
Right.
But that's it.
All right. Other questions?
Yes,
Dan?
thank you. So assuming, I understand anything can change, but assuming things go as they have been in the past, June 22nd is a primary for all parties, is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
the 4 parties that are now have party status.
Okay, and okay, and if somebody wants to run as an independent, what's their time frame? Is it like mid-August or something like that?
No, much earlier than that. I think they can start petitioning in April, and the filing is, I think, just before Memorial Day, unless it gets moved. Last year it got moved, I think later, I think into June, but the calendar when they start.
So April, May would be their petitioning and filing period, roughly?
Yeah, I mean, that's based on the statute, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dan, and people should know that the independent period, petitioning and filing period is different from the regular parties. So.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, there are 4 parties didn't get 50,000 votes in the presidential election for a president, and they no longer have party status right now. And that's the Independence Party, Green Party, SAM Party, and the Libertarian Party.
They did not get enough votes. Is that what you said?
That's
okay.
correct.
So then I thought you said there was 4 parties that do have status. So Republican, Democrat, Working Families.
Conservative.
Conservative. Okay. All right. Anything else? Mike?
You may have answered this, I'm sorry. I thought that was under court challenge. Is that not going to go ahead, or is that just the 4 parties?
They're definitely in court. Some of the parties are definitely, I think the Independence Party is definitely in court. But we haven't heard any more than that, unless Steve has.
Haven't heard. I mean, I agree they're in court, but I haven't heard anything.
They're contesting if they got enough votes. Yeah. Got it. All right, well,
Or aren't they contesting the constitutionality of the legislation or something?
Right, and not having enough time when the rule changed, I believe.
Yeah.
When the law changed. I expect a lot of changes again in elections this year. There's a lot on the legislative agenda, so we're gonna have to keep you abreast of everything that's going on as it passes.
yeah, I mean, I think we're all sort of on the edge of our seats waiting to hear, what's happening with our own election this year for those of us who are running, and, and the special election, and then, yeah, the bigger state changes, we're all.
Same day registration, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's all huge stuff, so as often as you both want to come and talk to us, we want to hear from you.
Thank you.
Happy to.
All right, if there's nothing else, then we'll let you get on with your day, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, take care. All right. All right, we're moving on to policies. We have Lisa here. Thank you for being here. And I guess why don't we move these and then we can discuss them individually, but we have two. Resolution to update the administrative policy manual, policy 2-10, outside employment of county employees, and policy 6-7, procurement. And that's ID 9841. Can I have somebody move that? Rich moves, Mike seconds. All right, so why don't we go ahead and talk about the first one? And Lisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about outside employments of county employees?
Sure, this was definitely just due for review. It had been almost 20 years since it'd been looked at. There were additions made throughout the policy, through each section, really, filling out what is considered compensated employment, filling out the procedures that employees and department heads should follow to determine if there's a conflict of interest.
Great. Questions? Rich, and then Mike.
I just had a comment in the first page, outside employment. It says other than.
Oh, where are you?
First page, in definitions, outside employment, second line.
Oh, yeah.
Other than, okay, got it. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Anything else, Rich?
Nope.
Okay, Mike, did you have a question, comment? You're muted.
Yeah, questions and comments, I think. It says in here in red, all persons filling positions, including elected officials. Yeah, I don't think that actually should be in there, right? Because while we are employees, I mean, we get paid by the county. We can't be disciplined by the administrator, for example. We're the administrator's employer, really. I don't really see how that can be in there, to be honest with you.
This is in the definition section?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the definition section.
Under employee.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had that question too. Technically, this is a part-time job for legislators, and many people have a second job or a third job, and I don't know how that's enforced. So I don't know. I'm interested in what other people think.
Well, it wasn't just, some of the things certainly apply to elected officials in terms of what we can be employed in, whether they're things that for lack of a better term, work against county interests. I think those would all apply to us. So I'm not sure it's like a blanket that it doesn't apply to us at all. I think it does to some extent.
Mike?
Well, maybe to some extent, but certainly not. Yeah, no, I don't agree. I mean, if you were a lawyer, for example, and you were representing a client within the county, that client's interest may run against the county's. And I don't know if that would exclude you from being a county legislator. I mean, that's bound to happen. Or if you're in, I don't know if we have a moral clause, for example, inside of our employment structure, but I would imagine there are certain legal, employment opportunities that someone may find untoward, but really, should that exclude them from being an elected official? Plus, you don't have the ability to fire them if they break that. So it's kind of like a toothless kind of thing.
Right.
Rich was going to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, Rich?
I was just going to say I had a conversation some time ago with Jonathan about that issue of, as a local attorney, there was an area of assigned counsel that was short of attorneys. And I said, oh, maybe I should pitch in, but decided against it because it created a conflict. Anyway, I don't know if you remember that, Jonathan.
What? Yeah, Jonathan, what's your take
Sure.
on this?
I mean, well, with attorneys, there's more to it because there's attorney conflict rules, which are aside from our rules of the legislature, or the county rules. So, I mean, I think you have to take it each thing. I mean, for example, it says that you shall not take employment which violates the code of ethics, or that creates a conflict of interest, or that is detrimental to the county. I'm trying to, looking through it, and I marked this up quite a bit to begin with, is what specifically would people say should not apply to a legislator? And I understand, like many of our policies, that there really is no discipline of legislators. But that doesn't mean that necessarily that a policy shouldn't apply to them. And, for example, the policy says that you shall not take employment which is inconsistent with your duties as a legislator or violates the code of ethics. I mean, I think those things are true. Maybe there's nothing we can do if you do, but I think it should be a rule anyway. So I'm not really sure, to be honest, what in here specifically is something that should not apply to a county legislator.
Kathy?
I just also wanted to mention that we have 3 other elected officials that are county employees, the county clerk, district attorney, and sheriff. I didn't know if the policy would apply to them as well.
Right. Right, it would, right, Lisa, because it just, as it is, it just says including elected or appointed officials. So, yeah. Mike?
Well, again, let me do 2 things here. Again, say the sheriff was doing this, or whatever elected official was doing this, there'd be no recourse. So I'm uncomfortable putting that in, to be honest with you. So I'm hoping maybe we can table this, and I'll take a little more time looking at it. But the other thing is business activity or ownership. Any consulting or business owned by the employee, including web-based businesses. So are we saying you can't own your own business? So Annie, for example, then would be breaking this policy, because I think she owns her own business, right? She goes and examines houses. I think she is probably incorporated. I have not a big business. I have an LLC though, so I'd have to go and get rid of, I guess, put it in my wife's name or something. It just seems like that's pretty broad. I mean, Frank Proto, I think, was a consultant when he was on the legislature. I imagine some of you probably, attorneys and things, would have some kind of consulting things. That just seems really broad.
Not what it says. It says you can't do that in a way that works against the interests of the county, whatever the wording is.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have another job. It just can't work in a way that goes against, I don't have the right words in my tip of my tongue.
That violates the code of ethics, essentially. So, and that gives examples of employment, including outside businesses, web-based businesses, et cetera. But it's not saying that you can't be employed or own a business or have a web-based business. You just can't have one that violates the code of ethics.
Does not use the county time. I understand what you're saying, but even in here it says do not use county time. Well, I'm on county time right now, I guess. My county time is pretty fluid, so there's no definable way for me to. I don't know. I have a lot of issues with it. So anyway.
Anne, did you want to say something since Mike mentioned you?
Sure. Yes, I have an LLC business, and but the way I look at this is that I think we should be held to the same standards, all elected officials. And as far as like on county time that Mike just mentioned, to me, that's more having to do with another elected position that might have set hours, so that if I have set hours, a set workplace, for instance, that I as an elected official, I shouldn't be using those time, resources, that office to conduct any business that's not county business. So, and the fact that there's no teeth in there, I think we, as people mentioned, I think we should still have it. And that's something, that we should aspire to. And also, if we're up for election or re-election, that people can hold us accountable to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, to follow up on what Annie's saying, almost all the employees, the legislature accepted, submit timesheets. So, I mean, the way these are normally done, and I've done this for a lot of years, for people who are supposed to be on county time and are not doing what they're doing or doing improper things, they submit a timesheet every 2 weeks. So if you're billing time for the county, right, you're counting that time for the county, which of course the legislature is the true exception to that, and don't do that. Then you're on county time, because you are getting credit for county time at that time, and that's the time when you can't be doing other things.
Right, that makes sense. Rich?
Yeah, I've got various outside interests that could be called businesses. And I had read this and I thought it wasn't a problem, but I guess we could do a separate section for the legislators just because we are a different creature. But I think it's okay as it is. We could accept it now with the idea that we'd go back and look at this issue of adding a section for us as a possible way through. Thanks.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar about adding something to the rules of the legislature, since we're going through that process. I mean, maybe, we have the code of ethics, but maybe we need a specific rule that addresses some of this in our rules so that legislators are actually reading those rules. Henry?
Yes, it also mentions that we're supposed to report to department heads. And we don't have a department head. I assume we can report to Jonathan, but he's not a department head.
You mean in like the procedure, it says that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also,
Oh, we can't hear you, Henry. Your voice went away.
okay, it talks about county employees. Outside must not interfere with the county employees. The regularly scheduled work or determined by the department head or designee.
Yeah, so maybe it does make sense to pull out elected officials and give it its own section. I don't know, what do you think, Lisa or Jonathan, about sort of making a separate section or adding that to the rules, or I don't know, defining it somewhat separately?
Yeah, that would be fine. If you notice right there where Henry was reading, there's also a separate thing for the sheriff's department. So we can add one for employees, because we actually negotiated in part of the, well, let me put it there. There's a separate policy that the sheriff department already had regarding outside employment, which is somewhat different and no reason to particularly change it.
Right. All right. What do you think, Mike? You're muted, Mike.
Wasn't going to do that anymore. Yeah, I mean, that sounds fine if we did something like that. I'm just saying, I'm saying what you already know. I mean, elected official, you're accountable to the people that vote for you. So it doesn't seem like there's much. I mean, I guess the legislature, if we have that in the rules of the legislature could sanction you, the other members, if they wanted to do something like that. But even they, I don't think could remove you unless that'll become a new rule of the legislature for all I know. But I did want to say my other concern about this, this really kind of rules out, again, this idea of, oh, it's against the county. I'm going to give you a scenario and you tell me how this would be handled. Like if we have somebody who works for us, feels passionately about the jail and says, we shouldn't be building that new jail. And we're saying, well, I'm not for a new jail, obviously, but say I'm not for a new jail, but we have somebody who works for us that says, oh, we need this new jail, and I'm going to put together a website, and they're pushing it. Under this policy, I don't know if they'd really be allowed to do that and continue to work for the county. If the county decides, listen, we're doing X, Y, Z, and we have an employee that doesn't like that and decides to become an activist based on that particular issue, would we have to end their employment? And that the same goes for, I guess, elected officials then. Can an elected official be an activist if that thing that you're being an activist against goes against the county? I don't know.
I don't know, Jonathan.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think that would classify as employment. I think you're right that it is important that we have a policy, and there's a lot of law on, employees exercising their views, and sometimes that's contrary to the municipality or government function that they work for. And we do, I believe, have a policy on that, and there's certainly a lot of law on that as well. But I think that's a separate issue. I mean, maybe it raises a little bit of the same, but not really. And it's a real separate issue, people expressing opinions, and sometimes those opinions might not be the same as shared by the county legislature, and sometimes might lead to, different policies than those employed by the county and the county legislature. But I think that's a separate issue, a separate policy. Because it gets to First Amendment rights, et cetera, people's right to speak out, but I do think it's a separate issue.
And we do have a policy on it outside, or it's public statements about county business.
Right.
Okay. Well, so what is the will of the group? Do you want to ask Lisa and Jonathan to pull out a special section to add under procedure for legislators, and so table this for now? Do you want to pass it now and ask them to do that? What do folks want to do?
We haven't heard from Lisa yet on her opinion on this.
Oh, all right, Lisa.
Well, I've brought it to you guys in the shape that it's in. If you feel it warrants a separate section for elected officials or just the legislature, I'd be willing to call that out to do it. I'd have to give it a little more thought as to what would be the differences, but I'm sure that Jonathan and I could come up with those.
Mike?
I just want to be clear to Annie's point, actually. I'm not asking for elected officials to be held to a lower standard. I mean, I frankly think we should be held to a higher personal standard, but again, I don't see how we really can fall under this. So anyway.
So Mike, do you want to table it? Would you be willing to pass it and then have them bring it back with a?
I'd rather table it, but that's me. I mean, unless we want to address, if you want to take that out and we pass it and we put it in the rules of the legislature, I'd be down with that. Or, I mean, I could vote against it if you guys think it's okay. I mean, vote for it. I mean, that's obviously your purview. But yeah, that to me, I always have concerns about that.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts, folks?
Why don't we table it?
Okay. All right. Well, so then we've already moved. This is part of the resolution. So Mike, do you want to move to table this particular policy?
Sure. I move to table this particular policy.
All right. A second for that?
I second it.
All right. Henry seconds that.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Here, are we tabling it to the next meeting? Because there's a difference between tabling something indefinitely and tabling.
Sure. That is what I meant.
Yep.
Postponing to the next meeting.
Thank you for the correct words. All right. So we're going to postpone this to the next meeting with Lisa and Jonathan looking into that. Mike, I think if you have specific things that you want to see happen or anybody else does, please contact them and give them some guidance on what you think it should say. And then we will discuss this again next time. Do we have to vote on postponing it?
Yes.
Okay, let's vote on postponing it. Mike?
Point of order, or
Oh,
clarification, I think. Just want to make sure we are postponing just the one policy. Is that correct? We're like
Yes.
pulling it out? Okay, thank you.
Yep. Just postponing the outside employment policy. Mike?
That's it. That's fine.
Yes?
Yes, I vote yes.
Okay. Henry?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I will vote yes on that as well. So thank you for discussing that. And thank you, Jonathan and Lisa, for looking into that further. All right, so the second policy is procurement. Thank you, Barb and Nancy, for being here, for waiting. This is the full procurement policy, which has been updated with a couple things, but also the environmentally purchasing, how does it go?
Environmental product procurement.
Thank you. A lot of P's. And this was discussed at length at Peak, and a few small edits were made. And so I don't know, Barb or Nancy, if you want to tell us a little bit, and then
Yeah, let me just Nancy and I will do that. Let me just give you a couple bullet points that I think are important for you to know.
Great.
Where this came about was about a decade ago. We moved forward with two policies to the legislature. One was the waste reduction and recycling management resolution. The other was the environmental product procurement. What was decided at the time was to combine, not to have a separate resolution for environmental procurement. And we put in a few statements about it in the waste reduction policy. Since then, there's been an incredible amount of work and policy setting in many, many municipalities around the country. There's more of an interest on our part in seeing that this policy work be done. The Environmental Management Council, and Amanda was involved then, also expressed interest in us doing this work. So we did come up with we did a benchmarking study to see what was going on and what the policies look like in other progressive and innovative counties. And we then worked with people in our county, particularly finance, ITS, as well as administration, to look at how we could integrate the environmental product procurement into the existing procurement policy as opposed to a standalone. We do have the documentation and process from the stakeholders group from last, 10 years ago. So we built on the foundation of best value purchasing and piggybacking with state contracts, but we think we've come up with a good system, because what essentially happened, there were a lot of products that we were procuring that had environmental attributes, but then there wasn't clarity about buying them, so they slowly went away. So when we look at this, the legislature, I should say the Peak Committee had a lot of interest in banning the plastic water bottles and the styrofoam products and disposable silverware. And we then realized there was a couple of us, including Katie Borgella, Jason, Jonathan, and a few others, that really we needed an integrated EPP policy, not just for those two items. So Nance, do you want to make any comment on what happened after that? Nancy Webster, by the way, if you don't know her, is our steadfast waste reduction and recycling specialist, who's now not a newbie. She's been with us for over 5 years and has a lot of experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just hit my 8-year mark, I think, which is
I know, I can't even keep
closer to 10 than 5.
Time is passing by. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one of the important takeaways is that we will work as a team, an interdepartmental team. It'll be recycling materials management, administration, finance, ITS, facilities, kind of get everybody to the table. And hopefully that'll help this policy stick and make it not cumbersome, but have us doing the right thing and focusing on these products, and they'll just become part of the routine, right? Like it'll just be a seamless integration.
We are adding as well the Chief Sustainability Officer to that team that's referred to. Amanda has, because she was so involved with this all along and has been shepherding it, Amanda's going to join us, and we're also going to have probably one municipal official that will also join us. From here, what's really going to happen is these people are going to roll up their sleeves. They're going to look at every category of products, and we have the research that was done in terms of other places. So take, for example, say we start with office products. They'll be looking at all of the possibilities for changing practices. Then we look, say, at cleaning products that might be approved by the EPA for use. Then we move to, other products, say, public works kind of products, which I'm hep on, in terms of whether they're cones that are used out in the field. Nowadays, there are lots of them made with recycled products, so on and so forth. And that's going to take probably a good 6 months, I think, for this team to be working on and reviewing. Drew's going to be very involved, or he's going to designate Joanne, and we're going to really make some progress here. So that's what this is all about. And Nancy Webster is going to take a lead role. She's going to be the coordinator of the team. I'll stick with her for a little while, and then the team is going to become more active. These aren't going to be policies that need to come back. You're approving that this team is going to work with purchasing. We will report out to the Peak Committee quarterly, and we'll make a lot of progress. And that's really the size of this. And when there are price differential issues, which are much fewer and farther between anymore, then this group will make recommendations. And if purchasing doesn't agree, then that will go to the county administrator and we'll work it through. I think that's probably good enough. Our plan is that once the legislature considers this resolution, the team's going to assemble probably at the end of February, early March. The first thing we're going to do is we have done a survey that's going to go out. Actually, Drew was the one many months ago that suggested we find out what is currently being purchased in departments, and we're going to do a quick survey, and then we'll go from there. It's pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to matching some of the other communities around the country.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that summary. I see you, Rich, but I was going to just ask Drew if he wanted to add anything from the purchasing side of things.
I think the only thing to add is that it's been a joy to work with Barb. I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to go
It's been a joy
green
to work
here.
with you too, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we ironed out a lot, and actually we involved Deanna in this a little bit, and we got some updated diversity language in here too, as
Yep.
well, that you've noticed. And I think we're going in a great direction, and I think, yeah, we can all work together. And I'm not even sure if there is a price difference. It'll end up with Jason. I think we'll iron out,
I think so
do we
too.
use best value here, or do we use, low price here, and what is best in the long term for the county?
Yeah,
So,
one of the things we're going to take into account is the fancy word is life cycle analysis, but in the end, there might be something that costs more money, but what is the length of service of those products, and that'll be taken into account. The other thing I didn't mention is also services. We really, just like living wage, we're going to need to really develop some policy for contracts in terms of services to be provided. And our final thing that we're going to do, and not within the county, is we're going to roll out some recommendations and some suggestions for businesses around the county as part of our Rebusiness Partners waste system programs, and that'll probably happen more toward the fall, winter, and then into early next year. So it's a work in progress.
Great. Well, we appreciate it. Lisa?
Yeah, I wanted to commend the team for their work on this policy as well, and also wanted to add, Deanna did take a first look at this policy and put in some language around equity-based procurement as somewhat of a placeholder. It's something that she would like to go back to probably next year and do a more fulsome review based on our overall equity strategy and so forth. So you might be seeing this come to you again with a different lens.
All right. Great. Well, we appreciate that. Let's go to Rich and then Henry.
Thanks for this. I'd note that procurement policies are probably one of the most difficult to actually operate in an organization because it impacts so many different elements. And you've chosen to do a very, very broad approach here, both on the financial, but also the environmental ends of it.
That's
because
very
the
true.
environmental ends, because the environmental goals are pretty ambitious and they're new, I had made a note here to try to put into the policy what you said you were going to do, which is to come back to peak on a regular basis to report. I anticipate the environmental piece of this policy will probably get updated as we experience how it's actually working. And so I would favor building that into
we
it.
currently have in there that there would be an annual report. I don't want to be held to quarterly unless I have to, but I think that we could be vague in what we say in terms of peak and the regular reporting.
Yeah, and I think that if I continue to be on peak and, you are
the representative, right?
If I'm working with this group, as it gets going, I mean, I think there's going to be lots of reports, maybe 5 years from now, I'm not sure how.
Yeah, we'll put together, what we'll do at the very least is we'll put together a one-page summary of bullets in progress that we can share as progress is being made on particular products. That's kind of how I want to do it. More on when we get a product category done, then we share it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I think this is ambitious, but a good thing to try to do. So good luck.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Henry?
Yes, this question is actually for Lisa. Is there any reporting now on the minority and women-owned businesses that get contracts?
It's more of a question for Drew. Let's.
Okay.
Oh, we're not hearing your audio, Drew.
Can't hear you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, there's a lot of oversight. It really depends on who the funding is driven through. So like through DOT, there's certain reportings that have to do. The airport was probably our most extensive because they had multiple classifications that we had to report on monthly, quarterly, and things like that. So we currently do a lot of tracking and a lot of encouragement of that. So even if it's not required, we still look for those opportunities. A great example is with all this work from home, we've been doing a lot of work with the computing center here in Ithaca, which is a women's owned business. And we like to give them the business, and, you know, they know what we can purchase at on the state contract because that's public information. So they work very hard to meet or beat that on many things. So.
Is it reported to the legislature in any way?
I don't think so, because, you know, looking at globally, no, I don't think we capture it that well globally. We don't really have the background systems that would assist us doing that. So like at the airport, the engineers assist with that a lot. With highway projects, the architects or engineers assist in that tracking, and the contractors often report that to us, and we just pull those reports together, typically just an Excel spreadsheet. So.
Yeah, because I wonder, like, you know, because I'm the vice chair of WDIC, and it'd be interesting to know how much business is being sent to minority or women-owned businesses. Just like I assume that it would be in the peak here, that it'd be nice to know how much business is being used by this procurement policy.
Yeah, we'll take a look. Yeah, we'll take a look at that and see, you know, maybe how we can do that. I think that wouldn't be very hard to do, especially if we can report out like when we let bids out. So when we award a bid, we can identify what bids were awarded that quarter or whatnot, and, you know, what the mixture was of women and
either by quarter or 6 months or year. We just would like to, I think we just like to know the information so that we can say, you know, we're doing this. We're giving business to minority and women-owned businesses.
Yep.
Because right now, I don't know how much business we're giving anybody.
And I think to your point, Henry, when we're looking at doing a more robust equity-based procurement, look at that. That's certainly one area that we're going to want to develop a lot further.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great, good points. Other questions about this? Or are we ready to vote? I think we're ready to vote. So we're just going to be voting on this procurement policy, and the other one was sent back. So let's go ahead. Dan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that passes. Thank you so much to all of you who've worked on this, and I'm very excited about it. Nancy, let me know when the group's gonna start up, and I'll jump in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
so much
Thanks, Drew.
for being here. All right. All right, excellent. We are going to move on to our next discussion of the rules of the legislature. We're not going to be voting on this today. This is just for discussion purposes, although we are going to be restructuring our committees. This is our last meeting as this 2020 group, so I don't know who will be here next year or this coming year or not, but you can certainly bring up any issues or questions you have, and we'll go from there. So Dan and Rich and I have pretty much completed our rules meetings, and we've got rules 6 to 12 here. And I guess we'll just kind of go through it as we have in the past, and I'll point out a couple of things, and if Mike or Henry have other questions, or Dan and Rich, you want to bring something else up, we can certainly do that. And then ideally next month we can put this into a resolution to get voted on. So it might be easier if folks start on packet page 45 with the redlined version. And under Rule 6, I was just going to point out that we did add in this section in red towards the bottom about friendly amendments. There's actually nothing in Robert's rules that is friendly, talks about friendly amendments. I guess it's something that we have come up with or created. So we just wanted to put this in there to clarify what it means, and that exactly what it says, the mover and seconder can agree that something is friendly, but if anybody else objects to it, then it has to be voted on. It can't really be an automatic approval of an amendment.
Why is that?
Because it's not, I mean, I guess that's not really a legal thing. I mean, because you're giving somebody, if you are the first one to raise your hand and you are the mover or seconder, then suddenly you have a power to approve an amendment or not approve an amendment, that it's sort of taking away the rights of everyone else on the voting. Dan, you can probably explain it better.
That was good. I would just add, it's meant to be a tool to make meetings run faster and more smoothly. It's not meant to be used as a weapon to block something.
Right. So we had an incident a couple months ago where something was, the mover and seconder said it was friendly, but somebody wanted to vote against the amendment, and we had to do some creative finagling to allow that to happen. It's a friendly amendment shouldn't just be automatic. If somebody objects to it, they should be allowed to vote against it. Rich, did you want to add something?
No, I think you both got it. And I think I was the one who objected, because there was the underlying resolution, and suddenly with the friendly amendment, it became something entirely different. And we never got to consider it. And suddenly we were off in another world. I think the objection to the friendly amendment is going to be used very, very rarely, but it should be there to protect other legislators.
Other thoughts or questions about that? All right. So I think it's really good that we're defining that and making that very clear. Anything else on Rule 6 that anyone wants to bring up? All right, Rule 7 is rules of voting. You can see there's quite a few little, changes in wording. We added in reference back to Rule 2. Then we kind of changed some of the numbers around. We asked Jonathan a few questions about things that could be cut, which were cut. The other thing is down towards the bottom under the new number 7, page 46. We added in the name short form roll call, because that's what we call that procedure. We just added it into the idea was already there, but we just put the name in, so that was clear. Any questions or comments on Rule 7? Henry and then Kathy.
Yeah, I noticed that in section 2, you limit the time to 2 minutes. Is there a reason for that?
I think it said the previous version said
Was
5.
Right.
And we felt like this, or I felt anyway. So this is just a chance for somebody who is going to recuse themselves to say why. I personally don't think they need 5 minutes to do that. I think 2 minutes is plenty. But
do you see it taking 5 minutes ever? And
No.
are they going to be timed?
No, because none of us are timed ever. But as with all of this, you know, like it's setting down what we think is ideal, and hopefully people will be aware of that.
Okay. I just think it's unnecessary.
Like we just take out the time totally?
Yes. Yes. But.
All right.
That's just me.
Kathy?
I was just looking at the new paragraph 7, roll call voting.
Yeah.
The first line, you changed it to full legislature from regular meeting. I'd like to, that is done at regular meetings. I mean, regular meeting is defined in the rules, and it is only changed and rotated at regular meetings, not special meetings.
Okay. Okay. Dan?
Does this section apply to committee meetings or not, just full legislature?
Just legislature meetings.
Well, right. So the number 8 now notes which parts apply to committees. So paragraphs 2, 4, and 5 also apply to standing and special committees. So do you think, Kathy, it should just continue to say regular?
Yes.
Rich?
What do we do at special meetings? Do we not have roll call votes, or do we just
No, there
stick
could be a
with-
roll call vote, but I usually use the same order from the previous meeting.
Does that make it
'Cause
easier for you?
It rotates committees too on the legislature agenda, so it's.
Okay, I'm fine with going to regular or back to regular. And while I'm talking, at the bottom of the page, it should say 2, 4, and 5.
Right. 2, 4, and 5. Yeah. And okay, we can do cross out full legislature and we'll go back to regular. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Anything else on Rule 7? All right, Rule 8 is motion to reconsider, and we actually did not make any changes on that at all, but still here in case someone else has comments. Rule 9, motion to rescind. We just had that one question, which Jonathan said was fine. Any questions or comments on Rule 9? No, Mike's yawning. It's really exciting stuff. Rule 10, receipt of reports. We did add in that one red line that if a person votes to adopt a given report, they can still vote against something else related to the report in the future. That's completely legit. And then we also added a part which on page 46 that another option would be to refer something back to continue conversation about it. And I see that on page 48, there's an extra period there, but we can take that out. questions or comments about receipt of reports? All right, we completely took out Rule 11, Committee of the Whole. And I think we talked with Kathy about that, and she was good with that. And then what was Rule 12, Rules of Order, will now be Rule 11 if we take out the Committee of the Whole rule. Anything else on any of that? Not so controversial this time? Rich?
And we're adding appointments after this, right? That's coming. So
Yes, that's gonna be.
So there's dessert for everybody at the end here.
Yes, there's still, right. And we still have another section of rules that we have to bring forward to this group to talk about. So,
Okay.
Yeah. And then the appointment, I think appointment policy will go at the end of that.
Okay.
All right. Well, if you have other changes or other things in this section that you want to see changed, let us know soon, because we will ask Kathy to put this on our agenda next month as a voting item. Jonathan?
One thought occurred to me is we may want to define what the whole number of the legislature is, because actually, like right now, we're in a situation where there are only 13 legislators because there's a vacancy. And to make absolutely clear that the number is still 8, because that could come up, you know. Well, you know, what is our whole number now? Is it 14 or is it 13 during this 1 month?
Right.
So
Well,
maybe we want to clearly say that.
But isn't that stated under quorum? I mean,
Rule 2.
What it says in quorum is the whole number shall constitute the. Okay, yeah, it does. If there are no vacancies and none of the persons. Okay, I guess that does cover it.
okay.
Never mind.
All right. It's always a good question though, because I think it's people never are quite sure. So it's good to bring it up, and maybe, you know, next time I give a committee report, I could remind folks of that.
That applies to committees too.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else about the rules? 6 to 12 for now? No. Okay, great. So moving on to reports. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes. I did look back and found our goals from almost not quite a year ago, actually. This was our first meeting of this group was in March of 2020. And I think that first meeting was the only meeting we had together in chambers. And then after that, we all went online. So, but I do remember sitting at the end of the table for one meeting. So I'm just gonna, I'm looking at the minutes from that meeting, and we talked about the priorities and goals. And I'll just kind of give a quick rundown, and we can think back fondly on this year. One of the goals was to make a decision regarding the redistricting process, which we did successfully do that. We made a decision and we voted. Another goal was to revise the rules of the legislature, which we have made excellent progress on. And thank you, Dan and Rich and Kathy and Jonathan, for your support. And I'm really glad we've gotten through so much of this. And like I said, once we vote on this section, we'll have just one more chunk to go through. So that'll be great. We wanted to finalize an update to the county website, which is well underway. And I believe the majority of departments have moved from the old site to the new version. I did have a question with Dominic about when the last, like the homepage, and I think there was a couple other departments that haven't moved over. He did let me know he wasn't going to be here today. He has some other things going on. So we'll get an update from him about the website at some point. But I think that has made good progress. We wanted to review the travel, training, and local mileage policies, in particular, taking into account the new subcommittee traveling to Albany to lobby on behalf of the county, and also the meal reimbursement policy. And those are things we did not do, which I think got changed partly because of COVID, and the lobbying group was not going to Albany, but also some other things took precedence. So we haven't worked on that. And I think some folks might not want to work on that. We said we wanted to support the new communications director. And I think we've done that. Dominic has come to many of our meetings. He's been a great asset to the EOC, but also to the county in general. I've seen so much growth in our communications with the community, and that's been awesome. We wanted to review our advisory boards and improve management of the numerous boards and bylaws. And I remember talking to Michelle about that very early last year. And obviously that's something we did not get to. So maybe we can think more about that in the coming year, because I know that's an onerous process for the clerks. We wanted to talk about increasing the salary of legislators for upcoming term. And while we didn't increase our salaries, we did pass a resolution to set the salaries for the next 4 years for future legislators. So that was good, got that done. And we wanted to have regular updates from departments, which we definitely had a lot of updates from a lot of different departments. And I think that certainly helps us all know better what's going on. That was basically our list. I know we've also been through a number of policies thanks to Lisa and the HR department. I don't have a number on that, but I appreciate the work that was done there. And I appreciate all of you for participating so eagerly this year. And I'll leave it there. Anyone have any other thoughts about wrapping up our committee this year? I'd love it if the gentleman of GO would continue on this coming year, but we'll see what you all end up with. All right, great. Thank you for indulging me in that. Let's move on. Our county administrator and deputy county administrator today is Lisa. Do you have any report?
I really have no report. Jason is participating all day in interest arbitration with the road patrol, and that's where I've been, and that's where I'll hop back on after this. So no report from county admin.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Lisa? All right, thank you. Jonathan, any report from you? Jonathan, are you there?
I had to turn on my mic to say no.
All right, thank you. Thanks for all your help with the rules and answering our questions. We really appreciate that. Drew is here.
Finance is good, thank you.
All right, you are good, thank you. As I said, Dom is in other meetings, so he's not here today. Anything from committee members or your advisory boards that you participate in, or any other things you would like to bring before this committee today? Dan and then Rich.
Just wanted to say thank you back to you, Amanda. It's been a good year on government operations. You got a lot done, and you had a nice light touch. And this is always an enjoyable meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Well, I really appreciate, as I said, you gentlemen of Geo. You're my guys. Rich, did you have something?
I'm going to be redundant to Dan. I think getting at the legislature rules was something that was like a dental appointment, but once we got into it and got going on it, it was good. And I think we can look with some accomplishment at what we were able to do this year. So good work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else before this committee today? All right. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon and this meeting. Oh, there are a couple of budget adjustments and transfers for information only. So check those out. Let someone know if you have questions. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.